Could you just first of all introduce yourself to everybody and tell them what your artwork is about?
I'm Frances Clark. I have a studio in the Craft Town, West Kilbride in Ayrshire, Scotland. And my work, my work really reflects my walks, I suppose, how I feel when I'm walking, the way I respond physically and mentally to the landscape.
So is it quite abstract?
No, it's quite figurative. Stylized at most, but not gone towards abstract. So I go between realism and stylized.
And do you have favourite subjects?
Oh, figures, portraits, but the decoration on them is always to do with the sea and the landscape and memories of that journey.
Right. Do you have anything to hand that you could show us? Fabulous.
So these are all ceramic. They're all fired in the kiln.
Okay, so talk us through a couple of these pieces, because I've got my interpretation, but it'd be very interesting to hear what you have to say about these pieces.
Goddesses. My goddesses are, where do you start? In the landscape, but it's about the feeling of those who have come before us. Very often you'll find my goddesses are looking up towards the sky, towards the stars, because that's how we kind of mapped our way and found our way home, how we travelled. The patterns on them have evolved into dots, which represent for me patterns in the sand, but also the sea. The same with the colours that are on them. I guess I'm always drawn to blues and greens. They just evolve. So these are a more stylised figure with the face on them. So this was an earlier goddess where the mark making and the pattern is from things that I've found on the beach, as much as making patterns within the studio. And just playing again with that idea of the memory of the journey, but also the feeling of being in the walk and the feeling that we're a continuation of the people who've been in the landscape before us. So I was very, very surprised to find that I wasn't completely Scottish, because I had that feeling to my local landscape. And finding I was 80% Irish was rather a surprise. These were the tribe, and I guess for me this was what I get here in West Kilbride, having that creative community, because that's been such an enormous part of my journey, and I didn't know it was there. That was what I always wanted to do. A figure, full figure, ankles and all, made from clay. And that took me a long time to find somebody that could teach me to do that. Going to the sculpture school with Andy got me part of that journey. It got me back sculpting again, which opened up so many doors, trying to find what you want out there, people who will teach you what you want to know, because making it up as you go along is frustrating, it's expensive, it's time consuming. So when you've got somebody, particularly somebody like Andy, that can show you, here's a way to do this, and he teaches it well. He teaches it so succinctly that you come away with probably more than he ever intended. Because it's a way for you yourself to make a start as an artist. When I left art school, I never felt as if I was an artist, and I spent 15 years wanting to go back to art school. And it was the sculpture school in Devon that made me realise I didn't need to go back to art school. There were people out there who could help me in my journey to become an artist. And Andy was instrumental in that. I learned so much from him. Even though I've moved away from moulding and casting, it's still, everything he taught me is still relevant. So
yes, because sculpture isn't, I was going to say, sculpture isn't just about moulding and casting, is it?
No.
So the motivation for you to go to him was all really to do that full-size figure?
Yes, it was a figure in clay, full size as in complete figure. A complete figure, not necessarily a life-size figure, but a complete figure, ankles included. And I thought, wow. And when I got there, I realised I need to make moulds. I need to cast these because I couldn't put that in a kiln.
No.
Which might sound as if I had a lot of clay experience before I went to him. No, I didn't. I didn't. That's all evolved since getting my own studio. It's been a journey, really.
So what were you doing before you went to the sculpture school? What were you doing? What were you principally making, or were you doing something else?
No, I was an art teacher. I taught art in secondary schools. So when I left art school, I went into teaching, and that's what I did. And I had a husband who kind of said, teaching takes over your life, doesn't it? And I never taught full time. So I didn't feel as if it was, because I would look at my colleagues and go, no, they're really, it's taken over their life. But it's only when you stop that you realise, yeah, it actually did. I wonder where I found the time before. So yes, I was an art teacher. By the time I had found a sculpture school, I was already planning on leaving teaching. And I think the sculpture school gave me the skills to have confidence in myself as an artist. It reignited my need to make. I feel as if my life, I now hit a stage where I had to go down that route. I needed to do it. My life was going to be emptier if I didn't do it. There'd have been something incomplete. Yeah.
And you said that you found Andy. How did you find him, and how did you decide the sculpture school was right over any of the other options?
I haven't seen anybody else who offers a full figure. They stop mid-thigh at most. So basically, I'd gone to an exhibition with my husband, and there were Raku rugby players, and they were supported in perspex, and they were flying through the air. And my husband said, "You want one of them, don't you?" And I shook my head and said, "No, I want to make one. My palms are sweating. I want to make things like this." So I left that exhibition Googling as we were walking figurative Raku sculpture. And there's no such thing, or at least there wasn't then. I wonder if I did a Google now, if there would be. And the sculpture school came up. I thought, oh, this is interesting. And the more I looked, the more I thought, yeah, I want to do that. So as it turned out, my 50th birthday was coming up. And I said to my husband, that's what I want. I want to go to the sculpture school, as I'm showing him my phone. And I think he was a wee bit disappointed that I didn't want a bit of jewellery. The sculpture school gave me much more than a bit of jewellery ever would have done. Yes. So that was the start of it. And I knew when I went there, and this was before they had the fabulous space that they've got now, when they were still in, I'm going to call it the chicken shed. I don't know if that's what you would really call it. But when they were still in the chicken shed. And even then, I thought it was the most amazing place on earth. So I loved it.
And what did you do? Did you do a course, or did you start with a taster, or what did you go full in straight away?
Oh, taster's too far away for me to do. So I'm coming down from Scotland. I was doing a 4-day course. So I started with a figurative course, and I'll be honest, I've kind of lost track. I think I did the figurative course And then I think I was straight into a mould making course, which I hadn't intended to do. They two advertised, and I was going to go for the one later in the year because I needed a head. So I had a head to make, because I knew that the way forward for this type of sculpture, I would have to do mould making and casting. So I made a head of my son, my oldest son, and off I went down to Devon. This time I knew I couldn't fly because I'd stuff to take with me. I drove down to Devon, which was very liberating, and made a mould and a cast of the head. And it was the first course he'd run. So he'd brought in Rich Ballman to teach it at the time. And Andy was there on the wings as well, showing us his moulds. And I now know what a good mould looks like. That's worth its weight in gold. And I came home saying to my husband, I need space to work. Can't do this in the house. And fortunately, once again, my husband supported me on it, supported that decision, and we looked for a space. From there, I did the animal course, the level 2 figurative. And there was a small stage where I was down helping Andy with some bits and pieces. It was an offer I couldn't refuse, which was just a wonderful experience. Yeah, and one day I'll go back. Right now it's finding the time. So the moulding and casting is what made me leave the house to make. So after going to his first one, let's see, I think that was May. I stopped teaching in the June. It was maybe August or September that year before I returned to it, which was an awful big gap. So I've also learned, if you go and do one of Andy's courses, leave yourself a month free to come back home and do what you did in the course, or complete what you did in the course, but leave yourself that month because you need it. Otherwise, you'll forget a lot of what you were shown because you are shown so much. You only take in about 20% of the information that people give us. So with that in mind, I think I could go back again and again and do his courses because I'd get something different out of each time.
Yeah, that's
I
good.
don't know if that answers your question.
That's good to hear. No, that's brilliant. And if you were going to describe Andy and Andy's courses to a complete stranger, how would you describe them?
Andy's very passionate about what he does and he believes in what he does. And I think his belief comes from a knowledge that he is good at it. He is very good at it. If you give him something to make, he can do it in a reasonably short space of time because he's found a way to make that happen quickly, and he passes that way on to you. He doesn't keep secrets. He shares what he does, and you come away with the knowledge of being able to repeat that quite quickly. So even though I'm not doing moulding and casting anymore and I'm firing in the kiln, everything Andy taught me is relevant. He's a natural teacher. He's a natural sharer. The new space in Devon is fabulous, absolutely amazing. And the food they bring in is good too. That's always happens. Yes. I think the fact I would happily go and do another one of his courses really says it all. Even though what he's doing isn't something I can put in the kiln. But I do have a plan for that because I'm working with paper plate. So I might actually be able to take what he does and put it in the kiln. We have successfully, from his books, that I teach now in my studio, and one of my ladies wanted to make a foot. I thought, well, I haven't done that yet on a scale where I would teach it. I can make a foot for pieces that I'm doing, but if I was teaching it, it's a different way of thinking about it. So I had a look at what Andy did in his book, and I had a look at the Anatomy for Sculptors book, and that's another thing. He gives you so many fabulous reference books that are so useful. So we made a foot from paper clay, which meant I could have gaps, air pockets in my clay that were then fired in the kiln. And because the armature for the foot was clay, I didn't have any worries about removing armatures, and it worked beautifully. It worked really well. So it's given me a plan for doing some other bits that maybe I'll need to just remove from the metal armature, but I can put them back together and I don't have to worry about clay exploding in the kiln because there's huge air pockets.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he's giving you the confidence to experiment.
Given me the confidence to make, I would say more than anything, and knowing what I'm making will be realistic enough for what I do. Yeah.
Mm. And you were saying that you'd love to go back. Which one of the courses would you really like to do that you haven't done?
He used to do specialist techniques. And just as I was thinking, yeah, I think it's about time I went and did that more for the hands than anything else, he switched them to single days. So coming from Scotland to do a single day, unless I'm making a journey to Devon to see some of Devon, which I really should do because I never see any of it when I'm down. It's a bit of a journey.
Yeah.
For one day.
Yeah, you'd like the specialist things.
That would be my next one. But equally, I could do any of them because when he's teaching, you don't say things in the same way every time. You'll say things in a different way. The way he works will have moved on since I was last there. So there's still things that he could teach me, even if I did a portrait course again. The animal course, the animal portrait course, yeah, I'd like to do that. But I would need to pick a stage where I'm ready to go and do more animal portraits. Whereas at the moment, it's still really the human portrait that I'm looking at, the human figure that I'm looking at, with occasional animal thrown in.
a goddess with an occasional animal.
Yes, I should really stick my goddesses on an animal.
Oh, that sounds amazing, doesn't it? A goddess on an animal. So you sell your work now commercially, Frances?
Yes, I do.
Through galleries?
Through galleries and from my studio. I think what surprised me was I've not approached a gallery yet. They've approached me. And I thought it would be a hard slog getting your work into a gallery. So if there's anybody out there thinking, oh, getting into galleries is hard, I think with the power of Facebook and Instagram these days, galleries can find you just as easily. And that's how they make their living. I'm not a salesperson. If somebody comes in to talk to me about my work, I'm more likely to tell them what I'm going to do next than promote the piece that I've made because of the way I think. So for me, galleries are invaluable. But yes, I sell through galleries, I sell here in the studio, but I also teach.
Yeah. And that's how you fund your life now, and that's how you keep a balance, presumably.
Getting the balance is hard because I keep waking up thinking, oh, I can get into the studio and do this today. So my walking, which is where I get my inspiration from, sometimes falls by the wayside. So I need to get that balance back. And just family life as well, getting the complete balance between them. But because I make the decisions to suit myself, I'll find it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or I won't, but I'll still be happy.
And they'll be knocking on the studio door going, Frances, are you still in there?
That's why my phone's always on silent.
Oh, I play that trick too. That's absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for being so generous and sharing all of your experience and the journey that you've been on. It sounds amazing.
I had no idea this was ahead of me. I had no grand plan. It's all been very, very organic. And I think it's leaving yourself open to that. I think if you're in a situation where you've got young kids and a family to support, it's a scary decision to make. But my kids were up. And once your kids are older, it's a different life. So this has been magical. It's been wonderful. So I'd like to say thank God Andy was there.
Thank God for Andy.
The catalyst. He was a catalyst in my life that changed the direction I was going in. I was ready to change. I didn't know how it was going to change.
I think that's the answer, isn't it? You have to be open to change.
I think so. And I didn't know how important that was either. It's only looking back I see that.
You mentioned just briefly, you mentioned about the food, and I must go back about the food because obviously that's Diane, isn't it? And Diane's kind of like the mother, isn't she, when the sculpture school's been going on?
Oh, they're a fabulous team. They really are. And I think that feeling as well of them being a team adds to the whole ambience in the place, because that warmth and that welcoming is what brings you back as well. When you feel comfortable in a space, you want to repeat the experience. And I would definitely repeat the experience I had.
So I don't really need to ask you, would you recommend it to people if you would go back yourself?
I do constantly, actually. If they want to learn about this in an immersive situation, then go and see Andy, because yeah, they're fabulous courses.
Thank you so much. That's brilliant.